Chad, how you doing, man? What's up?
What's up, man? It's been a while.
It has. It's only been like 2 weeks though.
I know 2 weeks off feels like eternity though, since I hear your voice.
Yeah, man, you should have came to ETH Denver. It was a good time.
Yeah, excited to hear all about it. I'm sure we'll get into that. Want to hear all the THORChain festivities that went down?
Yeah, yeah. I'll talk a little bit about that, I guess, before Chad hops on. I guess he's gonna be a couple minutes late, but yeah, we did have a THORChain meetup. Um, sorry, there's Chad coming up. Chad, how you doing, man?
GM.
Good morning. Yeah, sorry, a little congested. I guess I got the proof of attendance for ETH Denver. Not feeling like under the weather, but definitely a little congested. Hope you're all right, Chad.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Perfect. Cool. Yeah, so we did have a THORChain meetup, which was pretty good, and a bunch of people came out. It wasn't like crazy. It's at this brewery uh, in Denver. I couldn't be more descriptive than that. Like where it is. It was a pretty cool spot, but we were just kind of in the back, and just a bunch of OG supporters came out, and the Shapeshift guys were there, and people have been with the project for a long time. Obviously, Chad was there. Me, Gavin, and Eridonis from Nine Realms were also there, and hey, it's just a good time seeing everybody, and a lot of familiar faces that come around to all these events. So yeah, it's just nice catching up with the community, especially the Shapeshift guys, because I don't think a lot of us just haven't really had a lot of FaceTime with them, but it was really nice. Just like seeing that DAO, and just being there together, because we're all pretty aligned. So it's just really nice to get that FaceTime in too. Reminds you that we're all people out here, not just text on Twitter or Discord or whatever.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm just a PFP on Twitter. Not much else. I also saw Chad is apparently a pro go-kart driver in his spare time.
Chad is actually really good at the go-kart. Yes.
That was fun. That was actually a lot of fun. Um, Kyle was there, and Pluto was there. Like a bunch of the Nine Realms team. We just did like a go kart fucking thing, and it was nothing but fun. I actually nailed Pluto hard. Like Pluto took a turn, like he was in front of me, and he was taking this kind of like this hairpin, and he like spun out, like he just like literally spun out, and I just like railed into him so hard. I felt so bad about it. I just let all my Pluto aggression out on the track.
All that built-up tension.
And in exchange, you got lending for the next release.
Yes, I think the PR is pretty much done now, and I think enough people put their voices into it that I think it's ready to be merged probably this week or quite soon. It'll probably be in version 107. The actual code itself will land in 107. So, and the next release we'll have it on StageNet, and once we have StageNet, we can start testing it, validating it, all that kind of stuff, and then we can throw it onto mainnet.
Cool. So about testing, do you want to like go into kind of how the testing is going to be going down for lending? I don't know if you want to talk about the regression test framework or anything like that. Just having to do with like testing lending on StageNet before it goes to mainnet.
Yeah, we haven't actually had much conversation about what is going to be tested on StageNet exactly, like the actual steps. Myself and Pluto and others will probably have to get together at some point in the near future to start talking about like what are the actual tests we want to start doing, and then encouraging people in the community to start testing as well and start playing with it. Um, the really nice thing is that one of our devs on Nine Realm side has worked on this like regression test concept, and so it's a way of like describing on a very high level through like a configuration file, like which is in YAML format of like testing certain expectations. Like if we do a swap and the result of the swap is this, or whatever, or loans being opened or loans being closed and all this kind of stuff. So this is actually a new framework for testing, which is actually really well done well by Ursa. And so we've been pulling upon that for lending. But like I think lending is the first or one of the first features to get this kind of new testing suite to help validate its its assumptions. So yeah, the great thing about that is that because it's a YAML configuration about like how you do testing, like it really opens up for the community to start contributing to the code base without being coders themselves, right? So as long as you can write a YAML file, which is just a text file, there's nothing really codey about it. It's just kind of describing some concepts via just a YAML file. Then you can contribute unit tests to the project, which actually really be beneficial. So at some point in the future, I think 9Realms will be kind of talking to the community about this and encouraging them to contribute regression tests to the network, and then there'll be some bounties as well associated with that. So if you increase the coverage by X amount, you'll get some maroon, and if you find a bug or a problem, a failing test that should not be failing or something like this, then we'll probably have a bug bounty for that as well. So it'll allow more people to contribute without being coders themselves.
Cool. So what's it like actually adding a unit test? Is it basically just like running some kind of mocknet and just testing the accounting whenever like an action is made, just simulating, withdrawal LP ads and withdrawals and synths and everything, and just like make sure that the accounting's right on all the ends?
Yeah, basically at a high level, that's kind of what's happening. You're just like it's spinning up an actual like a local full node of like its own chain, and then it's creating a certain genesis, meaning that it's like populating the state with a bunch of pools maybe, or liquidity providers, or some sort of like original state, and then it does some transaction or series transactions, and then checks the output to make sure everything is like legitimate and matches what we think it should be. It's very similar to the smoke test we've already been doing for a long time. It's not quite the same, but it's conceptually has a lot of similarities. But I think it'd be very, very beneficial for the project. It makes it a lot easier. Like writing these tests for regression tests is a lot easier than writing the smoke test. The smoke test is like a huge pain in the ass. It's very effective. It does what it does very, very well, but it's really hard to like build and maintain, and like that's been a pain in our side for a long period of time. This regression test is easier to test, easier to maintain than the smoke tests are, but doesn't test as much as the smoke test can test.
Cool. So hopefully we see lending on StageNet real soon, and then people can start testing and validating, and then I guess after some period of time, then eventually it'll be rolled out to mainnet with some training wheels on, right? Yeah. I don't know if you thought more about the rollout itself, and I don't think we've come to a consensus on what the what like the min max CR will be and all those other things, but I guess that'll be a discussion while things are in testing.
Yeah, I don't think we've really come to a conclusion. I certainly haven't come to, even within my own mind, about what the min and max CR is going to be. We'll have a discussion as a community, downstream for that. The idea of like how it scales, like historically we've always done something like like raise the caps, right? Like it's like a common thing we've done in the past. And lending will be a little bit different than that. There won't be like a raise the caps concept. The network would actually raise its own caps dynamically relative to how the features like itself is performing in some sense. And so, like for example, there's a 15 million rune gap between the max supply, which is supposed to be 500 million, and the current max supply on the actual chain is like 485 million. So we're approximately like a 15 million gap. This is because of the kill switch, right? Not everybody took their rune. They had the BEP2 rune or the ERC20 rune they had, and they didn't mint an equal quantity of it on the other side because they've been doing it delayed or waiting or whatever it is. And so it's kind of like a reduced supply of rune that's supposed to be 500 million, but right now it's at 485 million. So this gives us a little bit of like a buffer to play with for this new lending feature. And so mathematically what's going to happen is we take the current outstanding supply, which right now is at 15 million I referred to, and we divide by some number, which is probably going to be the number 3, most likely. So you get a result of 5 million rune. So this 5 million rune is the total amount of rune that could be used for collateral, like in terms of value. Like you could take in $5 million, 5 million rune worth of BDC and ETH and whatever other pools that have lending enabled on it. And so that's like the starting grade. So even that hypothetical scenario, if the rune price were to dive 3x relative to the assets, and then 100% of all the loans were to, close their loans, then all that would happen is you would mint back the 15 million rune that you burnt as part of the kill switch, and we're back to the same monetary policy we've been the whole time. So it's not really that big of a deal in my opinion. If it goes beyond that, like the price of rune goes beyond that 3x, it goes to 4x or 5x, something larger, then it starts kind of borrowing from the reserve. In which case, even if it goes to 4x, it wouldn't really borrow that much from the reserve. Like, I think that'd be even less than what ILP has given out, for example. But even like if you look at historically, the worst moment in like THORChain's history was obviously the hacks a couple of years ago, and even then that we saw like a 3.5 or 3.3, I think was the number, price change relative to Bitcoin. And so like we're assuming the worst case scenario we've seen historically in terms of the price of the asset itself. So that's what's giving us the guidance of that number, that 3 number, is because it's relative to, in the worst case scenario, we saw multiple hacks, we saw the chain get halted, we saw all these things, like the most amount of FUD around the project at that particular time, and then we saw approximately like a 3x price change. So that we're using that as a kind of a guider to figure out like what is a safe amount to start with. And so as we start burning more rune from the network, so right now we're at 15 million I mentioned, and we start burning more rune, from the network because of this lending feature, like another 5 million rune is burnt. Now you've gone from 15 million to a 20 million, and now you divide that by 3, and so you can kind of see how that the feature kind of scales itself naturally as the feature is successful, as it gets more and more utilized, as the price of rune is performing well relative to the asset. That just kind of creates more space for more loans to be opened. And if it's the opposite's happening, things aren't performing so well for whatever reasons, then it kind of goes in the opposite direction. So it kind of stops new loans from being opened in a sense. So it kind of like governs itself in a matter of speaking.
Interesting. Can you explain that again, how it scales up and scales down? I'm trying to understand that.
Yeah, so it does it in two different ways to think about mathematically. The one is the quantity of rune that is missing from the supply. Like so like 500 million is the expectation, and right now we're at 485. And if we burn another 5 million rune, it's 480, right? So it gives you some number, and you divide that by 3, right? Whatever that number is. So if it's 15 million right now, divide by 3, you're left with 5 million rune. This is the total amount of collateral that can be collected for loans, like in totality. So 5 million rune worth of value. So it'll collect some BDC, it'll collect some ETH. The total value of that BDC or that ETH will not exceed that kind of 5 million cap that's at that particular moment. And so as people start burning more rune, it goes from that 15 million to 20 million, and 20 million to 21 million, and so forth and so on. So that's one way to scale it. As we burn more rune, we kind of allow more loans to be opened up in that sense.
Oh, I got you. So the maximum value that can be burned out of the pools is 1/3 of the difference between the current supply and the 500 million total supply at all times. So as more rune is burned, then it scales up at only 1/3 as much as is burned.
Right. So that's the first component to it. The second component to it is just the price movement of rune versus the assets, right? So if 5 million rune is the current max that we'll allow in terms of collateral, we say we get a bunch of BDC and a bunch of ETH that equals the amount, the 5 million rune, right? And then so tomorrow, let's just say that rune goes up 20% relative to Bitcoin, which might go up 10%. And so now all of a sudden we have more space, because that 5 million rune is worth more than it was yesterday, and the Bitcoin that was yesterday is worth more or less the same. See what I mean? So it's like as the rune price performs well relative to asset, it creates more space, because the previous loans that were opened yesterday are doing well, right? Because the room's outperforming the asset, and so the loans that are open, yesterday that were open yesterday, they're all in good status and all in good standing. So we could kind of raise the cap a little bit, allow more loans to be opened up because the previous loans are in good state. So we can go ahead and allow more risk onto the protocol because the previous loans are not at risk because they're doing quite well for the network. So there's really just two components of like we're reducing the supply of room, which increases the kind of cap in a sense, and then also the price of room and its performance relative to the assets will also kind of either increase more space or take away space depending upon how things are performing.
So in the other direction, if Rune is underperforming, then is that just basically maxing out the lending at that time, and it just kind of goes like above cap, but it's just essentially closed for that period?
Yeah, effectively at that point, if Rune is underperforming the assets, then you have more collateral, like in terms of dollar value of collateral, than dollar value of that, like, let's call it 5 million Rune. In which case, the CR would be very, very high, and you wouldn't be able to open up new loans.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes you got to think about it like, if this feature works and it does what we think it does, we want this thing to naturally scale up as it kind of proves itself, right? If it doesn't do so well and it's going the other direction, then we want to kind of scale down the feature in a sense and kind of close it down, right? So it's kind of like taking market signals and then like, okay, as the market believes in this thing and as it's performing well, blah, 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 we can kind of slowly kind of let it kind of scale up. And if it's not, then it scales down either direction.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sure people are really excited to start testing that out, and hopefully as soon as next week, we'd love to see it. So it should be the next release, I believe. So yeah, whenever the next release is out on StageNet, then I guess the testing will commence, and I would just keep an eye out on Twitter/Discord for updates on that if anyone here is like interested in testing. And I think it's possible that we might do like some kind of Discord stage, just something about the regression test framework and just like explaining how it works and how to use it and maybe how to write some tests. So I would also keep a lookout for that as well if you're interested in writing some of these tests or just testing some of the new features that are coming out, especially lending. So I would just keep an eye out for that on Discord/Twitter and for any kind of announcement if you're interested, or of course just reach out to Nine Realms and we will get something set up. And yeah, cool.
On the testing side, is there anything more planned for kind of like the economic angles rather than just code angles, because that doesn't really get fully tested on StageNet just because the economics are different? Or is it just those guardrails we were just talking about, and that's kind of just like the way to get it started?
Yeah, economics are generally done outside of StageNet for the most part. I think there's actually a little bit more to do in that regard. Like there's some more math I want to play with personally that I haven't gone around and actually played with, but the economics I think is pretty good for the most part. You're right in that StageNet doesn't really test some things because there just isn't the liquidity or the demand there, right? It's StageNet and not mainnet. But you can just test whether or not the code paths actually work and things produce the correct result of what we expect and that kind of stuff. And then we just launch it on mainnet. You really don't get the ability to test like the market until it's on mainnet. Do you know what I mean?
Of course, yeah, that makes sense, and I guess that's why to like make launch in a way where there are like guardrails in a sense, like the max supply and all that.
Yeah, as we always like to do when we launch a new feature, we like to put guardrails on it, right? Just for safety's sake. Anything goes wrong, then it's not that big of a deal because the amount of liquidity that's being applied to it is relatively small, and it's not really anything to be concerned about.
Yeah, speaking of that, which assets/pools would be initially available for lending? I think a lot of these things are kind of up in the air right now, but I wasn't sure if, whether it was going the direction of just Bitcoin and ETH, or everything. I think it's probably more likely that it's just going to be Bitcoin or Bitcoin and ETH to start out, just to lower the surface area there. But yeah, what did you think about that?
I think the consensus was to do just Bitcoin or maybe Bitcoin and ETH. I think that's is debatable. Might just start with Bitcoin. Let's like one pool to start, and then add another one once we feel more confident about the code and the path and all that kind of stuff. Whether we go beyond that to other assets, I think that'll just require some community discussion and debates around that kind of stuff. I think it's like what's interesting is that this lending design is obviously very different than everything else in the space, and the demand for this lending design will be different on a per asset basis, right? Like the demand for Bitcoin is going to be higher than the demand for Bitcoin for Ether because there's lots of ways you can get an ETH loan, right? There's lots of options out there already, and not much for Bitcoin. The demand for Bitcoin is much higher, but then you have smaller assets like, let's say AVAX, for example, or Doge or something like this, where the demand will probably be less, right? So some of the economic assumptions about how this stuff works is relative to different assets will be different. So I think when we test on lending for Bitcoin and we see that it has X result, whether that's positive or negative doesn't really quite matter. It doesn't necessarily mean that launching it for Litecoin or Dash would have the same result because it's a different economics behind it in terms of like the demand for that asset and that kind of stuff. And so like you might see, for example, that the CR is very much higher on Bitcoin because it's much more in demand. But then for like something a smaller asset like Litecoin or something like this, it'll be CR will likely be smaller, right? Because there's less of a demand for that asset than for Bitcoin. So we'll see how it all works out. But all that stuff can actually change the result of like how performant lending is working in terms of its efficiency of achieving its goal. And so it'd be interesting to see how things are different from pool A to pool B.
Yeah, and as always, I'm sure that the demand center is going to be on Bitcoin, especially how deep the pool is in relation to everything else, and obviously that not being offered anywhere else. So like even if it was only on Bitcoin, I don't think it's really missing out on that much functionality elsewhere, just because of slip and the actual depth of the pool itself. So um, even if it's non-existent on other chains or limited to maybe just a couple of the deepest assets, you wouldn't be able to take out a huge Litecoin loan anyway because there's a relatively low pool depth where you get wrecked on slippage doing that because of all the swaps that are made when you actually open and close a loan.
Right.
So yeah, cool. Anything else on lending and getting it out to StageNet?
I don't know, but maybe Pluto, do you have anything you want to bring up? I know you're in the audience, but it's something you've been thinking about.
I'll invite him up and see if he wants to come up. I guess in the meantime, we could talk a little bit about kind of what else happened at East Denver. So it was a super productive trip. It was Chad, you were there. Okay, we got Pluto up now. So what's up, Pluto?
Hey, how's it
GM.
going, guys? GM, good to be back. Yeah, it's been a couple weeks since we've done one of these. It's nice to hear everyone on the call again, and just excited to be here. So 107. This lending is the last PR, and I just saw that Chad, you sent some commits on it this morning. So yeah, I'll go and poke THORsec and then some of the guys from our team who have been reviewing this to get it to get the final reviews in, and then we should have it on StageNet early next week. So that'll be super exciting. We'll actually be able to take out a real loan with real Bitcoin since StageNet uses real assets. So that's actually, I mean, of course the CRs will be kind of wonky and it will be a pretty low loan amount, but it will technically be the first DeFi Bitcoin loan ever originated. So that'll be exciting. Maybe I'll let you do the honors, Chad. But yeah, just in terms of like, yeah, I think the biggest thing outstanding still is just figuring out like whether the nodes will vote to enable the feature on mainnet, and then B, what those starting parameters for like the max CR is going to be. Um, so that's something like I think Nine Realms will help try to guide at least the discussion around is what is the appropriate max CR, what are the appropriate launch parameters for the feature. And so one of the things that myself and some other members of the team have expressed interest in doing is basically building like a risk tolerance framework. So very really similar to just how like any bank will like mark the assets on their loan books to basically figure out what their like the current exposure of their loan books are at any given time. We should be able to see if we had, well, basically we should be able to see, in the form of a real-time dashboard, like what is the current loan exposure, across all of the different loans that have been issued. So basically, if everyone were to go and repay back their loans right now, what would be the amount of Rune minted at this exact point in time, at this pool depths, at these prices? So yeah, working on basically the real-time monitoring of the risk for the lending product is one aspect of it. And then what's going to help guide the determining like what the appropriate initial parameters for the collateralization ratio will be a basically like a simulation framework where we'll be able to say if we have this amount of outstanding loans and this is the current price of Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin rose to this amount, but the price of Rune stayed at this amount, or vice versa, if the price of Bitcoin stays relatively stable, but for due to some event, impacting THORChain only, for example, something like the hacks, where we saw the price of Bitcoin, the price of Rune reduce relative to Bitcoin. How much would it have to reduce to raise the outstanding loan redemption liability to what we would consider an unacceptable degree? So yeah, just like having some way of kind of seeing the different like tolerances, having different bands, and then basically having a couple choices where we say, okay, if you think that it's possible that this event occurs, and we'll kind of lay out like a simulation, then we suggest you vote for this, collateralization ratio. If you think that that's not possible, but maybe something a little bit less, a little bit less of a negative event like this might happen, then you should vote for this. So what we plan to do is really just show the node operators and show the community sort of different events, and then ask the community, what do you think is plausible that could happen, either now, 6 months to a year, or 2 years down the line. And then, we'll do sort of like one of those, a vote that we do similar to like the synth utilization vote, where a vote for the most conservative, a vote for the most progressive collateralization ratio is also a vote for the most conservative. And so the sum of votes for the most the sum of votes at the bottom of the most conservative becomes what we'll put in mainnet for the launch. So I think we have a pretty good like idea of kind of how, or at least that's my idea. I'm open to discussions about basically how we'll do the analysis, and then we'll do basically the voting for how to turn on how we'll turn on the right. And unless there's just like consensus within the community, like if core team and devs and everyone kind of on Discord all agrees on like a number, then I'll just open an ADR for that number, for that collateralization ratio, Obviously, that would be the easiest if we all kind of just agreed on something, but different node operators, different stakeholders may have varying degrees of what they deem to be an acceptable level of risk for this feature. And so if we have to, we'll kind of vote on risk, but ideally we just kind of all agree on it, and we can just kind of skip that part of it. So that's kind of how I see like the like the activation of the feature in mainnet playing out. But yeah, at this point, the PR itself has gone through, I mean, just like months at this point of rigorous feedback and review from THORSec and Nine Realms. And Chad, I just wanted to thank you for being so patient in, and also like, waiting for us to basically build this regression framework so that we could use it to test the actual feature. I think that will have been worth the wait. So I know to the community, everyone's super excited to see this get landed. But there was a lot of stuff that we needed to land first in order to feel that we were doing this safely. So I think we're now finally at that point, and yeah, super excited to get this in the next release.
So I'm curious to ask you, Pluto, like from your viewpoint, how much time, how much testing would you like to see on StageNet? I know this is something that you're going to be kind of heading up and putting a lot of thought towards. So like, I'm curious to understand like how much testing you want to see on StageNet. Like, is there an ETA that you think we could have to see this on mainnet?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that like the functional testing of the feature on StageNet is going to take that long at all. I mean, we've tested this pretty rigorously on MockNet already, and with the regression test framework. So I think from like a functionality standpoint, it will be. I mean, I'm confident that the feature will work as intended from the day that it lands. So I actually don't think that like the time that it spends on StageNet will be like needing to like bang on the feature that much. I'm pretty confident that the feature works. The duration of time that it takes between when we release it on StageNet and when we actually go to vote to enable it on mainnet, I think is really just a function of how long it takes the community to come up with an acceptable, determine what our risk appetite is for the feature, and then come up with a consensus on what the launch parameters are. And if we have consensus on that, then that'll be great. But I know that like at least Nine Realms wants to spend, maybe a couple weeks doing some analysis about what would be acceptable risk tolerances, at least from our perspective. So yeah,
all right,
I
cool.
could see it on, I don't know, why don't we say 420 YOLO? Why don't we call that that'll give us
the launch date.
Will give us like a month and 10 days. Yeah, I feel like 420 is a good one. Why not?
Yeah, I think we could probably do some more work around like when we do our StageNet testing, that anything we're doing on StageNet, we should probably just add a regression test for, even if it's passing.
Yeah.
Right. Just to throw more stuff at, like maybe we should do that as well as a team.
Yeah, I know. Like Ursa said, like we have all the happy path regression tests, but like I think that we want to add more regression tests around, kind of like this, like the not so happy path, like trying to open alone, just like trying to test the unsuccessful, trying to test the unsuccessful paths.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we should probably do some more work around that. I think we'll do that at StageNet, but we should also add the regression test as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet, guys. I mean, the community is super excited, and thank you both for all the hard work that you guys have both done on this. And everyone's excited to see it on StageNet, and then especially once it's live, I'm sure it's gonna be a big day. So looking forward to 420 now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would like to give a quick update, just something for people to think about. So I've been working on Binance Smart Chain. Always these EVM chains are just more complex than like Cosmos chains, for example. So I might have overestimated the or underestimated how much work was going to need to be able to get like Binance Smart Chain working on MockNet. But yeah, that's still coming. Hopefully, have that like on StageNet in like the next week or two. But we had some interesting discussions with like I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you exactly who, but I'll just say they're a very prominent like EVM bridging project, and so like we're basically kind of now like wondering whether it's even worth adding Binance Smart Chain, because if we were to integrate with that bridge, then they wouldn't basically you wouldn't need Binance Smart Chain. Like you would only really need a pool for their project, and then we would basically be able to basically like they will probably beat us to market on new EVM bridge integrations like 99% of the time. And EVM integrations are pretty costly. Like as we know, Binance Smart Chain is like it's going to cost another $1,000 a month to run, and it's questionable whether like at these EVM forks like are even worth it. For example, like AVAX is not making enough in liquidity fees to even justify its existence on THORChain right now. So we're kind of like I think we're still going to move forward with adding Binance Smart Chain, but the strategy is like starting to evolve a bit in our discussions, in business development discussions, as to whether it's even necessary or whether it's even like a good use of our time or of validators' money and resources to go after all the EVM forks, or just to like partner with bridges that are able to do that more quickly. So it's definitely interesting. I think one of the themes of like what we're trying to figure out right now is sort of like what are the core competencies that THORChain can fill that no other project can fill. And I'm beginning to see like more and more that I don't necessarily think that like we have a huge like differentiator in in EVM. I'm not even sure that we're necessarily going to have a big differentiator in the Cosmos. So like I think where our efforts are best concentrated are again on the UTXO side of things, but also I'm starting to come around to the idea that like that crypto note is going to be a big differentiating, a big differentiator for THORChain. So I would be interested to, once we ship lending, like really revisit what we can do to make the network more censorship resistant, so that we can start to, reinvigorate that debate around crypto note. But I'm starting to come around to that as being like a something that THORChain definitely needs.
Music to my ears. Excited to hear that one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like
Wow, yeah.
Like what are the things that like THORChain can do that no other bridge or project can do? And as we've been talking to different projects and different bridges about potential partnerships, it's clear that they're not even like trying to go after UTXOs or crypto notes. So if that's where we can be the most competitive, I think it makes sense to try and double down on those things.
Yeah, even a project like Chainflip, which will launch at some point in time in the future, I'm pretty sure they can't support something like Monero or a crypto chain because they use a specific thing, which I'm now blanking the name of the top of my head.
Schnorr.
Schnorr signatures, yes. They use Schnorr signatures to sign transactions, and so it makes an assumption that the chain you're interacting with has a Schnorr signature capabilities, which not all do. And I think CryptoNote's one of those ones that does not. And so I think that's one of the ways we can even from competitors who are either forking our code like Maya or forking our white paper like Chainflip, we can still stay quite competitive.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with regards to Chainflip, like, one of the things I want to make sure that we're doing as a team is not getting so caught up in our own ecosystem that we're sort of missing the developments in other ecosystems as well. So, as after we ship lending, we're really gonna, like, as a team, I think start to change gears on what we're focusing on. So, once we can stop shipping features on THORChain, on THORChain's native protocol, the two things that we're going to focus on are obviously security. There's going to be a ton of eyes turning to THORChain as we continue to integrate more and more protocols, as we begin to turn on, revolutionary features like lending. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny around it. So just doubling down on security throughout the rest of this year is going to be one of the major themes. Again, partnerships, business development, and integrations is another major theme. And then the other thing that I want to make sure that we're still doing is keeping on top of the developments of the broader crypto ecosystem. So whether that means building out something to support like the Bitcoin ordinals marketplace, to capture some of that attention. I know FamiliarCow had some, interesting ideas and thoughts on that. I would love to be able to be, focusing more time and attention on, new innovations, especially in like the UTXO and ordinal space, because again, I think that's something that THORChain can uniquely deliver that no other projects can deliver. So definitely interested in spending time looking at that. But what was the other thing too? Oh yeah, also like just figuring out like I read the article about Chainflip's JIT AMM pricing, their just-in-time liquidity provisioning model, and it's pretty interesting. Like, so if they're able to beat us on the Bitcoin to ETH pricing, that's obviously not going to be a great thing for THORChain, because you can assume that any neutral aggregator, so something like Rango or THORSwap, like they'll eventually evolve beyond just THORChain. They don't exist to just send liquidity to the THORChain protocol. They exist to give their users the best execution price. So I wouldn't be surprised if THORSwap ends up integrating Chainflip's liquidity pools at some point as well. And so if it doesn't matter if THORChain is in Trust Wallet today, if THORChain doesn't have the best X on the Bitcoin to Ethereum route, at some point in time, Chainflip will be taking that volume from us. So staying on top of the developments that allow them, even if we have the deepest Bitcoin pool in the world, if they have this JIT AMM capability that allows them to price that pair better than us, then they'll basically be winning on that route. So one of the things that I want to start to look at is whether we can build something like JIT AMM with THORChain, and I'd be really curious to talk to you more about that, Chad, because I was talking to Gavin the other day, and I was just thinking, like, Nine Realms holds a bunch of Rune, like, if we also had a bunch of Bitcoin that we were able to do to basically become a market maker, to basically sideline capital until like the exact block, or potentially like sideline synthetic BTC, so that in the exact block that we see someone trying to do like a big swap, we could do a quick liquidity provision and then do like a centralized exchange ARB, and then do a liquidity withdraw in order to not be exposed to the impermanent loss protection, but then to not be exposed to the impermanent loss of holding that LP for a long time, but then also, so being able to like take some of the, basically being able to make some money off the swap, but also give users of THORChain a much better execution price. I think that's definitely something worth looking into, is like, again, not letting other teams come in and use these sort of like clever it's not purely technical, right? It's like a technical and a financial innovation. It requires a market maker, an intelligent market maker, as well as the protocol that allows you to do that kind of thing. But if we were able to build something like that into THORChain that allowed advanced AMMs like Nine Realms and some of our other partners to be able to do that kind of just-in-time LP allocation. I think that would, again, just help us to continue to shore up our competitive advantage over firms like Chainflip and all the other forks in the space that are going to try to like pop up, right? Because like they can fork our code, but they can't fork our liquidity, and they can't fork the teams of market makers in the industry that are supporting THORChain. So I think as like the protocol starts to ossify a bit, we need to focus on basically getting more advanced players and market makers to provide liquidity so that we'll always be the best execution.
Yeah, going off of what you're saying, Pluto, there's been a lot of conversations, especially around us tripling down on integrations, and that's something that we have today that nobody else has today. No one else has a live protocol today that is actually working for cross-chain swaps. And so like this next 12 months is the time to get into every single one of these major wallets, major exchanges, major aggregators, and to start providing those routes while there is no one else has a working mainnet right now. We've had one for 2 years at this point. So we have a major competitive advantage right now, and we need to capitalize on that while continuing to innovate, obviously, and seeing what these other protocols are doing, and just matching the user experience that you could get on another service or a centralized service, something like Changely, ChangeNow, and Exchange. Like there's 5 million of them. And I think with this next round of integrations, these next the next people who are like looking to integrate THORChain, they really care about their users' experience, and they don't even it doesn't even show you what service you're using. It just automatically they have a server, just queries all of these quotes and just picks the best one, and then sends the transaction, and then bam, you swap Bitcoin to ETH 15 seconds later. You don't even know what route you used, and all of a sudden you have your ETH, right? So one of the things that we need to be doing is continuing to improve the UX and just the user experience. Like how much slippage is like being taken out of each of these trades. Like how do we become the preferred route? Because like we have the most secure, most decentralized Bitcoin vaults, but we also need to make sure that we have the best pricing, because a lot of users, they just don't care. They want best X. These wallets don't care. They want to have a smooth experience for their users. So a lot of this is just going to be being pushed by these partners to improve like our UX, our like developer experience, and making it so we get the users, like once we're finally integrated and in these wallets, that they have the centralized experience, but using our liquidity and our swap service.
Yeah. We're gonna. Sorry, I was just gonna say we're gonna win on that power law distribution in terms of like getting an early mover advantage on integrations. But there will be people who eventually there will be competitors in the space eventually. So yeah, that we just need to always make sure we're keeping on top of the innovations that allow people to outpace us on pricing, and just make sure that we're always ahead on that.
Yeah, so my personal feelings on JIT is quite negative. Like I understand the value of it. Like Uniswap already does it to some degree, and it works well for them, I suppose, in some sense. But the problem with JIT, in my opinion, is that it cannibalizes the LPs. Like unless you're an active LP and you're constantly making like transactions all the time, almost continuously, to adjust your position for every swap coming into this like some DEX or whatever, you're basically you're using concentrated liquidity in that sense, if I'm not mistaken, and you're kind of extracting the value that the LPs would normally be getting because you're an active LP, and there's no space for basically passive LPs. Like we see this on Uniswap v3, where like for most people who are on Uniswap v3, they're at loss. They're at a significant loss. The ones that are kind of like the more data sciencey people who can like manage their positions and actively run servers to manage their position, they're the ones that collect all the income of the pool, and everybody else who's just like a normal average Joe would just kind of get cleaned up, especially in chain flip scenario, because chain flip scenario, instead of using Rune as one of the assets in all the pools, they're using USDC, right? So they're a decentralized exchange using a centralized coin to be the other half of every pool. And you can imagine that because one of the assets is volatile and one asset is non-volatile, the amount of IL that you would experience as an LP on Chainflow would be quite high, like orders of magnitude larger than what you would normally see with THORChain. And so you can compound that with the idea of like the IL is going to be massive on Chainflip, and the fact that nobody's really making any income unless you're one of these like active people that are utilizing shit. Everybody else is just going to get like basically wiped out in some sense, or like be at a loss and not really making much money at all. And that becomes like a problem of like you're prioritizing the swapper over the LP, right? You're shitting on the LP and you're giving the swapper a better trade, right? In THORChain's case, we don't really use JIT, of course, and so we use synthetics to arbitrage these pools to correct the price right before the swap occurs. In a matter of speaking, we can keep the pool price very closely related to the market price, and since do that fairly well already. And when they do that, like they're actually not taking away from LPs; they're contributing. They're swappers themselves. They're contributing value to the LPs rather than extracting value from the LPs. And so that's a very, very different in how it works. Now, if the situation arises that we find that we're no longer competitive in terms of our Bitcoin pricing, right? So we're the only player in the game. We have been for over a year now or two, whatever it's been. And we can charge whatever prices we want because there's not really much competition. Of course, that's not always going to be true, and more protocols will be coming on to the future, which is well and fine. And if we want to kind of be more competitive on price wise in terms of slippage and that kind of thing, then we can just create virtual pools, right? We've been doing this the entire time with synthetics also. Like synthetics also has the ability to have like a virtual pool depth where you double the pool depth and then you apply the same mathematics and makes the fee significantly less. And so if we do find that we want to be more competitive on price wise with Bitcoin or whatever we want to do, it's really like a 4 or 5 line change in THORChain, and then I'm a mirror to enable it, right? So if we want to get more competitive in pricing, we can do that. But the reverse of that is like obviously if you're being more competitive in pricing, it means there's less yield coming into the pool itself, and so savers and LPs and nodes, get a little bit less in terms of their reward. So there's a balance to be struck. It's not like you can just offer like best price execution, and there's not a downside to that. And so we as a community have to kind of come together and figure out what we want to do and how we want to move forward. And is price execution the most important thing? Is LP yield the most important thing? We can debate and argue this topic, all day long. But at some point we'll have that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's some wallets that really, really care about price, and then some that kind of care about price and care about the it's like every single you consider these different customers of THORChain. Each customer has their own different needs and their own service that they want to offer to their users. So there's really no like one size fits all. Like obviously Trust is very happy with how the service works today, but future integrator number one, might not like the price execution and might want to go with the more. They don't care about the decentralization. They're just like, all right, yeah, whatever. We'll just put Changely in there and we're good to go. Whatever. Some people get KYC'd randomly. It's like that's fine. To 0.5% of people that happens to, like that's okay. We don't need to go through the effort of integrating a decentralized service. But then others will be like, oh yeah, we really care about that. That aligns with our values. So like that's something that we want to use. So it's just like it's just a matter of meeting the customers of THORChain, being the wallets and the exchanges. I think just where they are and just giving assurances that that the service works and just data around average slippage for their customers and the time that it takes to confirm trades. That's another big. Not, I would say a big concern, but like that's something that people ask about. It's like how long these trades actually take. Changely can do zero conf BTC trades. You send in BTC and you get the ETH out in 15 seconds, a minute. It's very quick. They don't do any kind of confirmation counting. While with THORChain you'd have to wait until the block is confirmed, at least 10 minutes. So it's like there's all these like obviously we can't win out on every scenario, but it's just figuring out what kind of balance we want to strike in order to get where we want to be, while we have the competitive advantage right now on all fronts.
Yeah, not to mention.
Can I just jump in real quick because I have to hop and go on mute again real quick, and just to respond to what you were saying, Chad. I think it's difficult to say whether we should prioritize swappers or LPs, but I think that in the conversation of strictly on LPs, we should never try to prioritize passive LPs versus active LPs, because really what you're doing there is you're saying we want to prioritize dumb money over smart money. And I think that you have to build a system that attracts smart money, because in the long run, smart money will always win over dumb money. So as nice as it is to be able to I've said this before about like savers, when we made the transition from like dual LPs to savers as being sort of like the primary product, that's still not to mention that not to discount that there will always be dual-sided LPs in THORChain. They're just going to increasingly become smarter. They're going to get more of the upside, and they're going to be in and out, based on their smart little data science things or whatever. So I think we have to build a system that attracts both types of users and gives outsized rewards to the smart money. Because I think attracting liquidity is always going to be super important, and it's going to allow us to give us the best X.
Hi guys, Pedro here from Thor Wallet GM. I just wanted to jump in quickly here because I had a couple of ideas to share. So, kind of looking at it from a different perspective, a little bit from the wallet perspective and also from the users. I think we can agree that the flagship product right now is, being able to swap Bitcoin for Ethereum. That's what, like, really nowhere else you can do it in the same volume. Of course, cross chain, but like what people really care and are super excited is doing Bitcoin, Ethereum, and also other Ethereum paths. So, for example, being able to do easily from Bitcoin to a stable coin or something. And I think what Chad was saying about finding ways to make this a bit cheaper for the user, I think that will be very beneficial for overall volume. So people will be able to do more transactions, because right now I think one of the challenges is for certain trades, THORChain is way more expensive than other alternatives. And in a way, maybe you don't want to compete there, right? So like for the very long tail, you don't care about that. But like if we could make it a bit more competitive, where certain routes, and as you say, maybe there's a virtual pool or something where we can give cheaper fees for especially Bitcoin to Ethereum, or like Bitcoin to some stables, I think that will generate a lot of extra volume from users, because even with the fees on Ethereum and with Bitcoin and so on, like it's just getting insanely expensive, just like the send transaction itself. And now with THORChain, normally we have an additional fee for swaps, and I think that is really gonna bring a lot of volume for what we are very good at, which is the cross-chain routes.
Yeah, one other thing that was discussed that's kind of in this realm is actually directly integrating. So similar to the DEX aggregator, how THORChain can swap out to a contract. Imagine THORChain being able to swap out to a bridge. So like going to L2s without having to actually integrate, an L2 network like as like a regular chain integration, which can be very expensive. It's something that was also just discussed recently, which I think is a really like a very good idea, because that is our bread and butter, is going cross chain, and also the aggregator is just a great product that a lot of other people can make use of. So like being able to get further into the EVM space without having to get further into the infrastructure costs of the EVM space. So like basically, like, so let's say we wanted to go to Arbitrum, like we just put in the Arbitrum bridge, like there's a connection between the Bifrost and the Arbitrum bridge, and you can just swap out. You swap to ETH, and then it just bridges that ETH out automatically to to Arbitrum L2, like, for example. So obviously there's a ton of applications that that not just that one, but like just another interesting way to get a better UX cross chain without actually having to add a huge amount of like additional amount of liquidity that we would need, and just like the whole burden of like adding new chains, but still getting the benefits of like really being the hub of being able to go, cross chain anything to anything is like a interesting way to handle that. So that's one thing that I'm hoping that we see in the next couple months.
Yeah, not to mention that any new exchange that comes out into the future, whether it be Maya or Chainflip or otherwise, like they have to have time to prove themselves. Like I don't think Trust Wallet will want to interface with a brand new exchange that launched yesterday, and so they're going to have their own struggles in the early days and bugs and problems as we did. Any new chain's going to have that kind of experience, and so they're going to have to burn time um, solidifying their code and baking their code and make sure it's like reliable and secure and all that kind of stuff. And so it'd be hard for them to get integrations probably in the early days, most likely. That's my guess at least. And they'll have easier time later on, especially with us because like we actually paved the way in terms of like cross chain swaps, integrations, and stuff. And so anybody who's following after us will have an easier road than we did, right? Kind of like when you walk through a jungle and the first guy to go through it has a machete to kind of like clear the path, and it takes the longest amount of time for that first person. And everybody after that point is a little bit easier, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these different projects kind of fan out and keep our eye on them, as Pluto was saying.
Remember, Chad, you don't have to outrun the bear. You just got to outrun the guy next to you.
There's a guy next to me, Pluto.
but yeah, it was all just super positive conversations at ETH Denver. And it was mostly just meeting with different wallets, DEXs, L1 protocols, and L2 protocols, and things. And let me tell you, like everyone that is like seriously building in this space, whether it be the wallets, whether it be the exchanges, even centralized exchanges, everybody is like looking at what we're doing and trying to figure out how to position themselves to capitalize off of like cross-chain swaps and savers being the two main products of THORChain. So all the serious builders in this space like see the infrastructure that we built and really want to use it. And obviously we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that all these eventually pan out. But everyone that's serious about building in this space, especially in the cross-chain non-EVM space, but even the EVM people, they're very interested in what THORChain is building, and that's people who've been building in this space for 10 years on various projects, various wallets, and things. And we're gonna get to where we need to be. It's just we have to step on the gas even harder this year while we have as little headwind as possible. So it's just stepping on the gas and getting into every single wallet, exchange, and aggregator, and also what Pluto was saying, like figuring out what our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, where we can improve, where we can make the UX better, how we can make the integration experience easier, and then ultimately like how can we get more projects, more wallets, just more integrators in general. So that's like been a lot of my efforts, and Eridonis is absolutely killing it on the BD integrations front. So that is like where we're absolutely tripling down right now, is just integrations while the playing field is wide open.
Yeah, like one of the things we do that nobody else is really doing, other than just like the cross-chain swaps thing, where people are still trying to catch up on the thing that we accomplished as a team, like as a community, like years ago, right? But not just the swaps thing, but also like the savers concept, right? And like the lending concept. Like these things are innovations onto themselves. And like, so take savers, for example, like in comparison to something like Chainflip. Chainflip, I think, in part wanted to use a stablecoin as one of the base assets of all their pools because it doesn't require people to take on risk of some new asset, like which would be the flip token in their particular case. And so, like, people don't want to provide liquidity outside the like particular community of Chainflip. Want to provide liquidity into a system where you have to sell half of your Bitcoin and then acquire, some flip token, which maybe you're bullish on, maybe you're not, but like becomes a kind of a barrier. And so instead of doing that, they would say, well, instead of the flip token, we'll just put USDC. And as I said before, like that would cause a large amount of IL, especially in either a bearish or a bullish market. It's only helpful when it's like a sideways market. But to make it even worse, though, is that, like if the market's bull, you probably don't want to sell your Bitcoin, like half your Bitcoin, to a stable coin, right? You're basically like exclude you're reducing your risk to your risk in the sense of like exposure to the asset. But in a bull market, everybody wants to have more exposure, right? Because you want to ride it up to the top and such. And so, like for us, we had like the inverse thing of like, no, you don't want to sell half of your Bitcoin into some stable coin and then take half the amount of Bitcoin risk that you have in riding up in the bull market. Instead, you can take 100% of your Bitcoin position and just earn more Bitcoin on your Bitcoin without selling any of your Bitcoin into some other asset, whether it be a stable coin or even Rune. And so, like, that's going to be something very different that they're structurally not capable of achieving unless they literally copy our synth design as well as the AMM design, which I don't think they're going to do that. At least I have no indication that they're going to do that. Lending itself, I think, like has the potential of becoming even a bigger product than the AMM itself. Like lending is a massive, massive industry. I think it's actually even larger than at least the last time I looked, and that was months ago, but it's even larger than the AMM industry, right? And so like there's actually a chance that the lending concept actually provides more value to the protocol than the AMMs does, which would be quite fascinating. And again, like all those swaps and trades every time someone's opening or closing or refreshing their loan, that's just going to cause swap volume and THORChain that you can't compete on with Chainflip because you can't make that swap on Chainflip's network. You have to do it on THORChain's network in order to get a THORChain loan. And so like that's some volume that we're going to have that cannot be taken through better price execution or whatnot, right? So it'd be fascinating to see how things go forward. But this kind of full stack that we're building, this fully integrated system of AMMs, earn product or savers product, lending, order books, potentially stable coins, like this kind of full stack that we're doing, like nobody in the industry is even like peeking at that. Like, there's some people who are forking some of our AMM stuff, but like nobody's going for the rest of it quite yet. They're like years behind us.
Yeah, agree completely. And you made a good point about liquidity providers, and they will just not. There's very little chance that they will be able to compete with the actual yields that is offered on THORChain just because of their model, right? Like they, especially with just-in-time liquidity, they're going to be very focused on probably having very few liquidity providers doing most of the liquidity provision, and most of that being just in time liquidity. So it's very very few people actually benefiting from this, when any kind of passive LP would just kind of be getting screwed on the fees, especially if it's a low pool depth and there's low amount of fees that are going through. Unless they're generating an insane amount of swaps, then there really isn't much yield to go around in the first place. And on top of that, the IL problem, like THORChain does have its own advantages. And not to say that we are completely uncompetitive. We are just we focus on two very very different things, and we just need to keep keep foot on the gas on like where our focus is, but also improving like our weakness points, and then just getting in everywhere. Because once we're in everywhere, which I believe we will be in the next 12 to 16 months, that's sticky. Like that's volume coming out of all of these major wallets and exchanges. So it's going to be a lot. Once we're in, it's not so easy to just say, oh, like, yeah, let's just implement Chainflip now, and this will be a quick thing. Like these integrations take a very long time, and once there is like one decentralized Bitcoin swap provider, I feel that it's probably unlikely that that we see people, like someone like Trust Wallet integrating other protocols for the same purpose. But I could be wrong. But that's why just stressing that like now is like the period of opportunity to really spring after it, and a lot of the wallets are stepping up to the challenge and are really excited to work with us.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing we pulled from ETH Denver. There's still a lot of interest. We met a lot of groups or teams and projects, and it was very bullish.
Yeah. Anything else to share about that, Chad? Or yeah. I can't think of any specific conversations that I could bring up, but like tons of wallets, exchanges, dexes, L1s, L2s, pretty much everything, and everyone's like very excited on THORChain and like wants to know how they can get integrated. So, hey, K Coefficient, what's up, man?
Hey guys, how you doing? Hey, I was just wondering about if THORChain or Nine Realms, or maybe even just Chad yourself, if have any. I mean, I don't even know if there exists a perp dex that offers native Bitcoin. Is there one in existence today?
You mean
I
a
don't think so.
decentralized one?
Yeah, a decentralized one. There's plenty of centralized perps that offer.
There could be one
native.
on like Stacks or Rootkit or Rootstock, excuse me, like one of those kind of systems that might exist in some kind of perp. I'm not quite sure though.
Okay, I was just wondering, if any, I'm kind of lurking in a lot of these. There's been kind of an explosion of perp dexes, EVM based perp dexes last few months, and a lot of them say in the future we'd like to go cross chain. I think they really mean they're kind of full of it, but they really mean multi-chain, not really truly cross-chain. But their users, I think, would love it if they could get exposure to native UTXOs, or they could offer that. I just wondered if any of those dexes have come to THORChain, or maybe THORChain has approached them, like, hey, we could offer you this API service or liquidity, or do those pose any kind of risk to THORChain itself?
Yeah, we couldn't really do a thing where we provide the Bitcoin for a DEX perp system on Ethereum. That would require like basically bridging assets, which is not something we generally do.
Right.
Building our own perps on our own chain, that's something that may happen. Myself and Gavin and others on the team have been talking about building a perps engine on top of THORChain for a little while now. It's very interesting because if you were to do it, theoretically, you would probably see a 10x in trade volume on that regard.
Like
which
right
away. Right away, you see a significant increase in trade volume, which is obviously a good thing. And the fact that we do that, this is like another thing of like what Pluto was saying before, like we might do that and maybe a chain flip would not, because they don't have the capability of doing it, for example. And so it's another thing we can do. The problem though is that we haven't really come up with a really good design, because one of the design kind of like principles of THORChain, at least in terms of when I was first putting it together, was that we have zero dependencies. And almost every DEX you see that does perpetuals right now, almost all of them, at least the ones that, to my knowledge, they use oracles like Chainlink, for example, to be able to push in the pricing of different attributes. Because of the leverage concept of perpetuals, it makes it more makes it much easier to price manipulate a contract and then close your position or something like this and profit greatly. Meanwhile, screwing over everybody else in the market in a sense. So that's a really hard problem. Like, how do you protect
and the LPs
and the LPs as well? So the question becomes like, how do you protect against price manipulation against a leveraged position? Because the price of the Bitcoin pools in THORChain, the Bitcoin pool or the Ethereum pool, whatever, they're just AMMs, right? So like anybody can just put a huge trade to the system and then push the price, and then once they do that, fuck around with something else. And so this is part of like the challenges of like building something that is fully integrated, like I've been mentioned earlier, is that you have to make sure that all the different components work together well, and then one component doesn't break another component, and all that kind of stuff, which is something obviously we spend a lot of time thinking about. I do think it's possible to do a perpetual trading on THORChain. I don't see any reason why it couldn't be done. There just this needs to be some kind of figured out on how to like protect ourselves from price manipulation.
Yeah, I just didn't know if the cents could kind of help with that, or I mean, essentially, lending and borrowing is in a way a perpetual trade. Like that's I
Right.
borrow with my collateral and then just buy and keep borrowing over and over. That's the same thing as a 10x trade on Bitcoin or something. So
Yeah, there's correlation there for sure. They're not quite the same thing, but there's definitely some similarities between lending and perpetuals. But I think it's something that's interesting. We should definitely keep an eye on it and think more about it as a team and think about implementations that work for us and which we get much more larger trade volume on the network.
Okay, all right. I was just wondering if anybody had
Oh, and
thought
by the
about
way,
it, or I know you guys have thought about it, but I didn't. I was thinking it more of a integration type of thing.
by the way,
that
if
was even possible.
hypothetically, if we were to do perpetuals, think about it this way. This is like one of the benefits of this. So hypothetically, we were to do perpetuals and we were to see a 10x increase in trade volume due to that, which is a fair assumption to make, then the amount of yield that the network produces from swaps will obviously greatly increase relative to the block rewards, right? Last time I
Right.
looked, I think it was like 85% of the rewards in the pools and notes comes from the block rewards and 15% from the swaps or trades, which relative to other dexes is actually extremely good. But if we were to 10x our volume because of perpetuals or whatever, then the block rewards would be relatively smaller relative to the actual trade volume, which would flip our system to be like profitable, right? Not
Yeah.
profitable, but producing more income from providing a service than it is from
Emissions.
emissions, right? And that would be a significant flip. Like that would be like a flippening within the THORChain world. Like I remember having conversations with the devs in the really early days of the network, and we were saying to ourselves that in the beginning, obviously block rewards is going to be the vast majority of the income because it's early days and there's not a lot of trading happening, not a lot of integrations and that kind of stuff. But hopefully, with a longer period of time, that that will change and that will shift over the time span of maybe 5 or 10 years, maybe 15 if we go further out. But like this would have caused us to hit that flippening much earlier than I would have thought, 2 or 3 years ago when we were designing and plotting this whole thing. And so it would be really interesting to see that kind of flippening happening like much earlier than we even anticipated.
Yeah. I think if you just, I mean, a decentralized Bitcoin perps offering would be a huge product hit because a lot of people don't like wrapped Bitcoin on Binance Smart Chain, on Ethereum, whatever, AVAX, all of it. They're just very reluctant to use it. I think
Right.
if somebody offered that, it would be massive.
Yeah, I would love to do it. I think it would be a great product for the network. Myself and other individuals have to get together and put our heads together. And,
I mean, it could be totally separate from THORChain. I mean, separate from a business sense, I guess. But
yeah, we've talked about that too, about building on top of THORChain a separate either chain or a separate thing. We've had that conversation as well. To me, it makes more logical sense to put it on chain for a few different reasons. But I think I'm open to other approaches entirely. Like again, this is something that myself and other devs are going to have to get together and kind of hash out a proper design. But to be honest, like I don't want to to be honest, I would love for us to do a perps design that's different. Like I don't like to generally just like re-implement the same thing that everybody else is doing, just put it on a multi-chain kind of concept or a cross-chain system. I'd rather us think about perpetuals in general and figure out is there fundamentally a better way that we can do this, similar how we did similar how we did lending or similar how we did savers, like similar how we did the AMM itself. Even like this slip-based fee model was completely different than everybody else. We didn't just copy everybody else's XYK system. We built our own free model, which was much more effective and efficient in many ways. And so, like, if we do get into the perpetuals world, I'd be interested to take a deeper look at it and from a first principles perspective and figure out is there structurally a better way we can do this than how everybody else is doing it, as we've done with almost every feature of THORChain.
Well, I think right off the bat, you have slip-based fees, so that's one huge advantage right there for perps. You know, I mean,
yeah, for the protocol, it'd be great because, like, imagine if you took 100x leverage on Bitcoin, right? And you put one Bitcoin to begin with, and things go well for you, and you get this high reward. And when you exit, you're exited with 100x more value than you did before, in a matter of speaking. And then all that's going to the pool. So the slip-based fee model for that would be just generate massive amount of income for the LPs and for the savers. Like, it would be incredible almost. So, like, that's, again, like, part of the reason why we like the idea is because we can actually get massive amount of income for the LPs and savers as well.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity there. That's all. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, and you were saying a little bit about just the flippening of block rewards versus the liquidity fees that come through the network. And I believe right now we're about 75-25, and we're trending in the right direction. And the entire goal with integrations is to make the flippening happen. Like, that's the goal, is the 10x volume in the next year. So, like, unequivocally, like, that is like what we're working for, to flip in the to flip in the block rewards, and to make more or to make it so that most of the fees coming through THORChain are organic fees rather than block rewards. So we're doing our best to accelerate that vision, and just make it happen as soon as possible, because that puts THORChain in a default alive state, which is, you know, what we need to see this thing keep going.
Right, and to that point, like, if you as the pools get deeper, right, in terms of liquidity, like the Bitcoin pool gets deeper, the Ethereum pool gets deeper, and then there's an arbitrage opportunity because the Bitcoin price shifts up or shifts down or whatever it might be in other direction. Because the amount of swaps that need to happen in that pool are relative to its depth to correct the price. The deeper the pool, the more swaps you have, arbitrage bots making trades to correct pool prices. And so that obviously pays fees, right? If you're making an arbitrage swap, you're paying fees like everybody else. And so you're generating income. So it's also like a thing, a kind of mechanism is that the deeper we make the pools, and we're trying to make them as deep as we reasonably can get, it naturally increases the trading volume of the network, just because arbitrage has to trade a higher volume of swaps and trades and value to correct the prices.
Anyone from the audience want to come up and have questions? There's a couple comments here. Let's see. Can you guys give an update on the sudden spike in protocol revenue a couple of days ago? This is actually related to kind of what you're saying about, you know, large swaps bringing a lot of fees. There was a user who made about $1 million Bitcoin to ETH swap, and didn't check the expected output, and ended up paying around 20 to 25% of that $1 million Bitcoin swap in fees to liquidity providers and to the nodes. So that is, like, if anyone noticed the spike in protocol revenues in the past couple of days, it's literally just one swap that caused a giant spike in revenues. And yeah, I mean, that's just how the slip-based fee model works. It's you have to make sure that you're, like, anyone that's listening, if you're making a swap, like, definitely double check the amount. I'm sure people here, like, kind of understand that the more you swap, the more in slippage that you pay. But if you're not actually checking how much you're getting out, and I mean, if you're doing $1 million swap, you should probably be checking how much Ether it's estimating you come out, because his quotes are pretty accurate. So. I mean, not to blame the user, because it's also on, like, the UX and how that information is presented to the user. But just be aware that making a large swap, you can pay a lot of fees, and that the THORChain will not stop you from overpaying in fees if you choose to do so. So that is directly what caused a huge spike in protocol revenue / APR. And obviously, it's also a good reminder that APR is backwards looking; it's not forwards looking. So you look at the APRs on different sites, and they might be different from one front end to the other, and that's just a difference in calculation. There's many different ways you can calculate the APR, but it's always backwards looking. So um, I believe what THORswap does is it looks at the longest possible period. So it'll look at like the past year of data, for example, and say, all right, if you were holding this last year, for the last 365 days, what was your APR? It's not forward looking on, hey, this is what the APR will be, because obviously that's a function of how many swaps are coming through and what the block rewards are, and the even how much security is on the network. Like there's so many factors that come in. Remember, APR is always backwards looking. It's not forwards looking. And just because it says one thing on one site and one thing on another site, they're all in the same pools. So you deposit on one front end or another front end, it's all going to the same spot and earning the same fees. It's just the difference of how it's actually calculated. And there's many different, like if you look back in the past 30 days, that's very different from looking at the past 6 months, which is very different than looking at the past year, which is different than looking at the past 2 years. So it's all a matter of perspective and how you're looking at the APRs. So just wanted to call that out too, because I know there's always like lots of questions going around about APRs and like why are they different on this one front end or why are they different on this other front end? Like how are they calculated? So yeah, hopefully that clears things up for some people. Just know that APR is always backwards looking, and it could be different levels of resolution, either a long period of time, which should be more stable, more sturdy, or like a short period of time. 1 month might vary wildly. Or if you look at the past day, then you could see 1,000% APR one day, and then minus 50% APR the next day. So it's all just a matter of perspective and timeline when it comes to actual yield.
Can I drop a little alpha on you relating to that?
For sure.
So this is going to be interesting. So it is possible, and I've kind of proposed this a little bit to some of the devs in the back end, but it is possible to achieve fixed rate interest rates on savers, right? So that you can, as you were saying, the APY that you are looking at is looking at the history, not necessarily the future. So you don't really know with any kind of certainty what your yield is of being saver, for example, for the next year. And so I've proposed an idea of how we can achieve this goal of fixed rate interest rate by creating a kind of like buyers and sellers market, order book style almost, where as a saver you can opt to have a lower yield but fixed rate, or opt for having a higher yield but not fixed rate and take on that kind of risk. And so like that would be an interesting thing into the future of how we achieve the ability to get a fixed rate interest on the savers side. Wouldn't work for the dual side. It can only really work for the savers, but nonetheless, I think a lot of people would really like that functionality, because then you actually know with absolute certainty that in a 1 year time frame you're going to make a 2% yield on your BDC or whatever the number is going to be. That predictability is quite valuable.
Yeah, that's another very interesting product. Good call out, Chad. Yeah, you could just vary you could just basically calculate how much would need to be emitted as rewards to target a certain percent, and then just go for that. So, yep.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Definitely appeal to the lower risk crowd.
Cool. Anyone else want to come up or have questions? I think that's pretty much everything that is like, cutting edge and brand new. There's a lot of developing conversations, especially just with all these new partners and integrators. So that's kind of where all the focus is. So the cycles here are pretty long in like how long it takes to get from the initial conversations to like, hey, we're ready to start building this integration, to hey, we're testing it and we're live. Trust took 16 months to get from end to end into iOS, from first conversation to live in iOS swapping. So be patient. There's some good stuff coming on the way. We brought up K coefficient again.
Oh, hey,
to close this out. What's up, man?
Sorry. Chad, could those rates, the variable rates, and can we set up a market for those rates, like a rate swap type of thing? That's all.
Yeah,
I go you go crazy with that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's effective how it works. Is that like, say I have one BDC in savers, and I want guaranteed, let's just say 1% fixed rate interest, right? And then whatever yield that my one BDC produces over the time span of like 1 year, let's just say, the other person would get that. So I'm looking for a 1%, and I put up a one BDC, and so I'm looking for 0.01 BDC, and then so maybe Pluto comes up and he says, okay, I will give you the 0.01 BDC that you're looking for. I will supply it for you, and that way you're 100% guaranteed to get that fixed rate after that at 12 months. But whatever yield that your one BDC produces over the next 12 months, like I just get that yield, whether it's 1%, whether it's 0.5%, whether it's 10%, like whatever happens, Pluto gets that, whatever that result is. And so this puts zero risk to the protocol itself. Like THORChain itself takes on no risk with this concept because you have givers and you have takers in that scenario.
Yeah.
And you're basically creating an order book of size. So it's, if I said I want fixed rate, 30% fixed rate on my one BDC, like obviously nobody's going to take that because, they're just going to basically give me free money in the end. And so the market will find its own little, like, okay, variable rates are sitting around 3 or 4% right now, but fixed rates sitting around, 1.5% or something like this.
Yeah. I think you got it. It could be the whole thing with savers, lending, variable fixed rates.
I think that'd be big. I don't think anybody in the industry does fixed rate interest especially for Bitcoin. So it's just like that'd be pretty enticing.
No, maybe they used to, but they've all gone belly up, or they had fixed rates for a certain period of time, like 30 days or 60 days or something like that.
And how far is that from happening? Like, is that like a very hard change to do, or it's just right now like an idea, or what? How far would that be?
Yeah, I mean that right now it's just an idea. It hasn't really been discussed in any kind of detail within the devs themselves quite at this point. I think my intention was let's just launch savers and get that thing out the door, in a more vanilla way that's more like basic, and just produce the basic kind of needs. And then for like V2 of savers might be this concept, right, which may happen into the future at some point, but honestly, it's not even really being discussed at this time between the devs because we're more interested or more fixated on, other things right now. Like lending might be one of those things. Buying a smart chain might be another one of those things. Integrations, like there's other things being done that are probably higher value than this particular concept. But at some point in the future, maybe that'll change, and we'll take another strike at savers and improve it to have a fixed rate option.
But it's also possible, right, that you could say you take a small percentage from this, let's say, market that generates. So somebody wants 1% fix, so then they pay like 1.01, and that goes to the protocol as fees. That could also be a possibility, right? So another way to generate fees for the protocol.
Maybe. I'm open to just discussing and debating.
Or Thor wallet decks could offer it as well.
Awesome, yeah.
One more topic, actually, we could talk about, and maybe Pluto's a good person to talk about this as well.
I think he's gone, but yeah.
Oh, he's gone.
I see him there.
He's in the room, but maybe not on his phone. But I think in the version 106 that just went out, it had the TSS key share capability, TSS key share backup capability. So what this basically means is that every time the network does a churn, and we migrate all the funds to the new wallets, the network also triple encrypts the private key of each individual TSS share. This triples encrypted with 3 different encryption methodologies. I think Blowfish is one of them. I think AES 256 another one. I think there's some other one. I can't remember the top of my head what that is. But it's triple encrypted, and then it's stored on the chain itself. And so the benefit of this is that even if in an extreme scenario that like Amazon, let's say Amazon kills all of their boxes, right? Just like this murders them all, and the node operators didn't back up their keys like off AWS into something local or some other location or whatever, that the keys could be recovered from the chain itself, so that they can rebuild their infrastructure off AWS, build it on DigitalOcean or some other provider in the world, or maybe bare metal, whatever, and then they had the TSS key shares up on the server already, on the chain itself already, and they can just download it, decrypt it, and then carry on like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, we talked about that a while ago, and so I guess it's finally just on mainnet now. But yeah, super cool concept and something that just makes the network more censorship resistant.
Yeah.
So another thing leading towards just the further decentralization of the infrastructure itself of THORChain, where even if the nodes go down somehow, they can just restore as long as they have their mnemonic saved somewhere.
Right. Yeah, and the mnemonic is.
I'll just
Go ahead,
I'll just jump in real quick because I'm sorry, excuse the background noise. I'm at the gym right now. But yeah, so that landed in 106, and we were able to successfully test a recovery. So we went on to one of our StageNet validators, deleted the Bifrost key shares from it, and then restarted Bifrost, and it was able to unencrypt using the mnemonic its own key share, and then rejoin the active validator set. So that's been tested and working in StageNet. It hasn't been enabled in mainnet yet, and I think we'll push that out as to enable it to all validators in a future release, maybe with 107. And I think the obvious benefit there is to censorship resistance, and this would have been one of the major things that we wanted to land before doing something like crypto nodes. So it's just another one of those enhancements that's going to give us more confidence that we have the ability to recover in the event of some sort of government censorship. So yeah, definitely just continuing to make strides there so that we feel safer if we decide to embark down the path of crypto nodes.
Yep. Yeah, I think this functionality for crypto nodes especially is probably a good angle, a good thing to do for sure.
Because at this point, like once this gets enabled, even if every service, every cloud provider deleted every validator off of the internet, as long as those validators had their mnemonics backed up somewhere, we would be able to reconstitute all the Asgard vaults. So that's obviously great.
Yep. Yeah, and in comparison, like I think I want to say it's XLR. I'm sorry if I get this wrong, but but XLR, like they don't do 2/3 majority; they do 90% majority. So in order to like sign a transaction, requires a larger percentage of the nodes, and so because it's larger percentages, it's easier to lose more than 10%, right? It's easier to lose more than 10% than it is to lose like 33%. And so I think how they do it, according to the white paper at least, is that they have backdoor keys to all the funds, which for me is quite problematic, but I guess for them it's not. And so if they want to be able to reconstitute the lost vaults, they have backdoor keys to be able to pull the funds whenever the hell they want to. That's not a very good approach in my opinion, for obvious reasons. A better approach is just to back up the keys themselves onto the chain itself and then triple encrypt it using very high-end encryption methodologies to make sure that nobody could extract the value. Not to mention that these TSS shares, they're only temporary. They only actually last for 3 days. So the idea that somebody's going to be able to brute force one of these key shares 3 times in a matter of is pretty would be pretty hard, very hard.
All right, cool. Anything else you guys want to wrap up with? I think that pretty much covers everything to talk about for this week.
I think that's it.
We're good. Great space.
All right, sweet guys, hold the vision, and let's just keep killing it. And any suggestions or just like things that people want to bring up, the team's always listening and just looking at how we can improve, especially like protocol features wise, and just general feedback is always appreciated. So we're always here. You guys know how to get in touch with us. So awesome. I guess we'll see everyone next Friday. Cheers.
There, guys.
See you guys.
Cheers.
See you. Bye.